Hello, and welcome to Soothing Pod Sleep Stories. I am Michael, and tonight we will journey through a world where myths awaken and the oldest powers of the earth come alive. From Gaia, the mother of all, to the Titans, Cyclopes, and the rise of Zeus, every secret of the cosmos unfolds. Discover the origins of the gods, the whispers of prophecy, and the eternal presence of Gaia herself in a story of creation, power, and timeless legend. Before we begin our journey tonight, let's take time to relax and let go of the stresses of the day. Allow your body to sink into the mattress beneath you. Here and now, there are no obligations, no to-do lists. By simply lying in bed with your eyes closed, you are already giving your body nourishing rest. Close your eyes and feel the earth beneath you, solid and eternal, a presence older than the stars. Breathe slowly and imagine the quiet strength of Gaia, or Gaia, stretching beneath the ground, her form both nurturing and vast. From her came the first light of creation, the skies above, the seas and the mountains that rise in silent majesty. Let yourself rest in the steady rhythm of the earth. Inhale, sensing the flow of life moving gently through all things. Exhale, releasing tension and worry. Even as time passes and the world changes, Gaia remains constant, a foundation for all life, unseen, yet ever present. Feel her energy surrounding you, holding you in quiet steadiness. Imagine roots reaching deep into the earth, connecting you to her enduring strength. With each breath, let the calm of her presence fill you, steadying your mind and relaxing your body. Stay here for a few moments, in the quiet embrace of the mother of all life, grounded, safe, and connected. Let her timeless presence settle around you, carrying a sense of peace that endures beyond the hours of the day. Now that we have taken a moment to relax and find peace and comfort in the place that we are in, let us begin our story. Before time could collect into hours and before space could measure itself in distances, there existed only chaos. It was not darkness nor light, neither void nor fullness. Chaos was the unformed state, a silent expanse of possibility where no boundaries yet stood. Within it, everything that would one day become the cosmos drifted without shape or purpose, waiting to settle into order. From this primordial indistinction arose the first solid presence. As horizons took their first breath and foundations stirred beneath what would eventually become sky, Gaia came into being. She was not born in the manner of mortals, nor fashioned by predecessors. She was simply there, complete, enduring, and immense in scope. Through her, the universe gained its first certainty, a surface upon which life and divinity could rest. With her appearance, the undefined began to separate into realms. The idea of above and below became possible. What had been without form began to lean toward structure. Gaia stood as earth in its earliest notion, not yet adorned by mountains or seas, or the bright presence of the heavens, but present enough to anchor existence. Her presence marked the earliest organization of the cosmos. Where she was, chaos had to yield and make room. Gaia did not rush to populate the world. The myths describe no haste in her early acts, for creation at this stage was less an event than a steady unfolding. Through her, the primordial world gained orientation. Solid and timeless, she formed the base upon which all divine genealogy would trace its roots. The gods who would later claim authority, and the creatures that would roam the lands and skies, would find in her the origin of their lineage. Nothing yet contested her, for no rival powers existed. There were no storms, no seasons, and no conflicts of succession, only the quiet weight of beginnings. In those earliest moments, she was the cosmos' first mother, though her children were not yet born, and the first sovereign, though no throne yet existed to signify it. Her being alone sufficed to define the world as something more than possibility. From chaos and Gaia, a pattern would soon emerge. The myths that survive from the earliest poets tell that after her arrival, other primordial beings took shape as well. Tartarus, deep below the earth, Eros, who stirred creation toward union, and night and day, who would later circle the world. But none bore the lasting influence of Earth herself. Gaia would become the center of cosmic ancestry, the point from which gods, giants, and mortals traced their origins. Once the realm had structure, the story could begin. The order of generations, the vast web of divine beings who would contend, rule, and inherit, would all find their lineage grounded in the first and most stable form to appear. From out of chaos came Earth, and through Earth the world was set into motion. With Earth established as the earliest solid form, creation began to progress by lineage rather than force. Through her own will and without consort, Gaia brought forth her first children. They were not yet gods in the later Olympian sense, nor mortals with fixed lifespans, but elemental beings whose presence defined the structure of the world. The first was Uranus, the sky, who arched above the earth and gave height to existence. With his arrival, the cosmos gained its expanse, an endless vault where winds might one day travel and stars could later be set in motion. In mythic chronology, he was both son and future consort, for divine generations did not follow mortal customs, nor mortal logic. From Gaia's depths came Aurea, the mountains. Each stood as a sentinel between earth and sky, creating the first boundaries and elevations. They were not places on maps, for maps did not yet exist, but rather beings whose existence represented solidity and formation. And then arose Pontus, the sea, Where Aurea defined the heights, Pontus filled the hollows with waters that had not yet learned to ebb or storm. With Uranus, Aurea, and Pontus, the first geography of mythic Earth took shape. Sky above, peaks that reached toward it, and seas that pooled below, all born from a single origin. These were the first children recorded of Gaia, and they established the pattern the ancient poets would later note, that Earth herself was mother to the natural world and to the divine lineages that would rule within it. Once her earliest offspring took form, the world settled briefly into a quiet order. Uranus stretched himself fully above Gaia, crowning the world with sky, and the mountains rose between them like great pillars. The sea circled the land in broad silence. Still, there were no seasons and no storms, and the cosmos had not yet entered into its more dynamic history. In time, Uranus became consort as well as child. The union of earth and sky was not sudden. It followed the logic of myth, in which primordial beings would join to create newer generations, each with more defined powers and destinies. From that union came a line that would shape nearly every subsequent myth. The Titans. 12 in total were born from Gaia and Uranus. The daughters, Theia, Rhea, Themis, Mnemosyne, Phoebe, and Tethys, embodied various aspects of divine and cosmic order. The sons, Oceanus, Coeus, Creus, Hyperion, Iapetus, and Cronus, held domains tied to waters, seasons, celestial light, and generations of mankind that would one day follow. Though these roles would shift and expand through different traditions, the names remained constant, forming the foundation of Titan genealogy. The Titan generation was not the end of Gaia's offspring with Uranus. After them came the Cyclopes, 3 in number, Brontes, Steropes, and Argus. They were beings of immense skill and raw power, each marked by a single great eye. Their talents would later prove pivotal in arming the gods who came after, though those events belonged to the age of Olympians rather than the first generations. Still later she bore the hecaton Caries, whose names, Cottus, Briareos, and Gyges, were spoken by poets with a mix of awe and hesitation. Each possessed 100 hands and 50 heads, more fearsome than any being that would rise in later myth. Though terrifying in form, they were not yet forces of destruction. In the earliest era, they were simply part of the expanding genealogy of the cosmos. Thus, within the first divine generations, the world filled not with forests or cities, but with personified aspects of creation. These lineages became the architecture of myth, for once they existed, other tales could unfold. But Uranus, unlike Gaia, regarded their children with unease. His fear did not stem from malice alone, but from foresight, an ancient anxiety that the generations to come would supersede the ones before. In response, he sought to contain them, refusing to let some rise fully into the world. In mythic symbolism, he forced them back into the earth, and their confinement burdened Gaia deeply. This tension between sky and earth would form the next turning point in cosmic history. For all genealogies that originate in myth require not only creation, but succession. Where Gaia had shaped the cosmos through birth and expansion, Uranus now shaped it through restraint and control. Unequal desires could not hold indefinitely. The cosmos would soon divide once more, and new beings would inherit the order that followed. The union of Gaia and Uranus marked the first great dynasty of the cosmos. It was through their lineage that mythic order would advance, for the primordial world did not yet recognize ranks or realms. It only expanded by birth and succession. The Titans, born in sequence, became the first recognizable generation of deities whose influence would shape eras to come. The 6 Titan daughters appeared first in the genealogies. Theia embodied radiant light. Rhea would become mother to the Olympian gods. Themis came forth with the notions of divine law and righteous order. Mnemosyne carried the power of memory and the shaping of story. Phoebe possessed prophetic brightness, and Tethys was linked to the primal waters that would later nourish rivers and springs. Each daughter added structure to the early cosmos, refining what had once been shapeless potential into recognizable principles. The 6 Titan sons were born likewise. Oceanus, eldest, encircled the world with waters said to be too vast for mortal understanding. Coeus held the axis of intellect and inquiry. Crius bore the fixed markers of time and heavenly placement. Hyperion governed celestial fire and the course of the sun. Iapetus traced the lineage that would eventually lead to mankind, and Cronus, the youngest, carried within him an ambition that would one day alter the course of mythic history. Together, the 12 Titans formed a generation both expansive and formidable. Yet the Titan brood did not satisfy the full scope of creation. The world was still young, and the cosmos demanded further functions. From the same union came the Cyclopes, Brontes, Steropes, and Arges, though later poets emphasized their craftsmanship and the forging of divine weapons. In these earliest periods, they were simply colossal beings whose single eyes saw deeply into the powers of raw nature. Their presence hinted that creation was not only orderly, but elemental and forceful. The final birth from earth and sky produced the Hecaton Kyries. Cottus, Briareos, and Gyges arrived not as subtle embodiments, but as overwhelming forms possessing 100 arms and 50 heads each. Their strength surpassed that of every being born before, so immense that even the Titans regarded them with awe. With their appearance, the genealogy of Gaia had reached a new scale. Creation had given rise to beings capable of shaping conflict as well as order. Yet Uranus did not rejoice in the fullness of his offspring. The myths recount that he feared their potential, especially those whose strength could rival or surpass his own. In time, his apprehension hardened into refusal. He began to hide the youngest of the children, pressing them back into Gaia and denying them the space to enter the world above. In symbolic terms, sky refused to lift fully from earth, and the cosmos bore a pressure that could not endure forever. Gaia endured this burden silently at first. As mother, she carried the weight of creation. As earth, she held the imprisoned beings within her depths. But the tension between her role as origin and Uranus's role as restraint could not remain without consequence. The suppression of the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires became a point of fracture within the earliest cosmic order. The children born of Gaia and Uranus were powerful and many, yet the sky, fearing the strength of the life he had helped bring forth, retreated into stern and distant authority. Uranus pressed their offspring back into the depths of their mother, sealing them away from the surface where light and movement might have given them form. The Titans, tall and radiant in divine stature, the three Cyclopes with thunder in their eyes, and the 100-handed sons, Cottus, Briareos, and Gyges, found no place in the open halls of the world. They remained hidden, unheard, and unseen, while the world remained young and constrained. Gaia felt the weight of her children within her depths, a strain not merely of form, but of injustice. The sky had once been companion and counterpart, but now had become impediment and jailer. Slowly, the burden grew, until creation itself seemed halted beneath his unyielding presence. In that early age, when time had not yet been measured, there were no wars nor mortal grievances, only the quiet contest between two primordial powers, earth longing to expand and sky refusing to yield. It was then that Gaia conceived a plan born of necessity. From the metals and stones and dense minerals that lay within her foundations, she shaped an instrument unlike anything yet forged, a sickle with a sharp, curved edge and a handle formed with purpose. Its making signaled an age in which tools and intent would enter the cosmos, where change could be shaped rather than merely endured. Among all her children, it was the youngest Titan, Cronus, who listened to her counsel. He was keen of thought and bold in spirit, unburdened by reverence for the order Uranus had imposed. The plan was simple in its outline, but immense in consequence: to break the oppressive bond between earth and sky and allow the world room to unfold. When Uranus descended once again to overshadow the world and hold his dominion close, Cronus wielded the sickle. With a single act, he severed what had been bound since the first dawn, dividing sky from earth and granting them distance. The separation marked a turning, for no longer did the heavens lie pressed upon the land. There was space for air, for movement, and for the unfolding of eras yet unnamed. From the blood that fell from Uranus upon the earth came new beings, for the cosmos did not waste its power. The Erinyes, later called the Furies, took shape, guardians of oaths and vengeance. The Gigantes, towering and storm-born, rose as figures of later conflict. From droplets that mingled with the ash tree roots came the Meliae, nymphs tied to forests and spear-making wood. And from the sea's white foam that gathered around what had been cast away, the goddess Aphrodite would one day emerge, though her time belonged to a later telling. Cronus, having fulfilled the deed, released his siblings from the confines within Gaia. The Titans took their places across the breadth of the world, while the Cyclopes and Hecatonchires stood again in the open air. The cosmos entered a new order under Cronus, who now held the mantle that Uranus had forfeited. Gaia, relieved of her earlier burden, watched as creation expanded to fill the space between earth and sky. With the sky no longer bound to her, Gaia's form settled into quiet constancy. From her came the mountains unshackled and distinct. From her came the plains where the Titans would one day walk. Uranus retreated to the heights above, while Cronus set about shaping the age of his own rule. Yet the act that separated sky and earth carried with it a prophecy, for Uranus spoke of a child who would one day overthrow Cronus as he had overthrown his father. This ripple of foretelling passed through the ages like a quiet current, unnoticed by most, but never forgotten by those to whom lineage and succession were matters of power. Gaia, having set change in motion, neither celebrated nor mourned, for in the earliest mythic times, events unfolded without the judgments that mortals would later attach to them. The earth remained the foundation upon which the divine order grew, and the sky remained its counterpart, distant but forever connected. The sickle, shaped by necessity, had altered the shape of the cosmos, and the world breathed more freely for it. With Uranus removed from direct dominion, the world entered the age of the Titans. Cronus, youngest of Gaia's children with Uranus, assumed rule, overseeing a cosmos that was no longer pressed tightly by sky, but still shaped by the enduring presence of Earth. The Titans, each bearing their inherited roles, spread across the world, their powers defining both the divine and natural order. Oceanus encircled the lands with waters that flowed endlessly, marking the boundaries of the known and the unknown. Coeus, axis of intellect, fostered thought and inquiry among the gods. Crius held celestial markers in place, keeping the courses of stars and planets steady. Hyperion governed the movement of the sun, its fire tracing the hours of existence. Iapetus, father of future mortal lineages, carried within him the seeds of mankind, and Rhea, whose care and foresight would become legendary, prepared the paths of the Olympian generation. Themis, Mnemosyne, Phoebe, Theia, and Tethys completed the 12, each with domains that structured the cosmos and maintained the rhythm of divine order. Gaia, while no longer the initiator of immediate change, remained the enduring matriarch. She watched the Titans assume their roles, providing counsel and support where it was sought. Her influence was subtle, not commanding, a whisper in the shaping of laws, a reminder of justice and duty, a presence that reminded even the strongest that all order rested upon her foundations. Through her, succession and prophecy continued to flow, though the Titan age itself would be marked by both stability and foreseen upheaval. Cronus, despite his victory over Uranus, carried the shadow of prophecy. He had been warned that a child born to him would one day overthrow his reign, just as he had overthrown his father. This knowledge shaped his actions and the governance of the Titan age. In time, he took the counsel of his mother, Gaia, less as a guide than as the voice of history, for she had witnessed the cycles of succession before. Through her, the continuity of divine generations was assured. Each act, each birth, each potential rebellion belonged to a larger design. The Titans ruled in accordance with their natures. Their dominion was vast, extending across seas, skies, mountains, and the hidden currents of thought and time. Even the Cyclopes and Hecatoncheires, now freed from the confines of Gaia's depths, contributed to the shaping of the cosmos. Brontes, Steropes, and Arges brought the spark of craftsmanship and thunder, while Cottus, Briareos, and Gyges lent strength and endurance that would one day aid in the coming wars among gods. Gaia's children in their collective might were both guardians and progenitors of the next generations, a living genealogy of power. Though the Titan age was long and expansive, Gaia understood its impermanence. She knew that the cycles of prophecy and succession would continue. Her children, as powerful as they were, would eventually give rise to the Olympian gods and further mythic generations. The balance of creation required that she remain steady, a foundation beneath the unfolding ages. And so, while the Titans ruled, Gaia's presence ensured continuity. The earth, eternal and unshaken, held both the weight of history and the potential for the future. In these years, mortals had yet to walk the earth in meaningful numbers, and the gods themselves were not fully formed in hierarchy. Yet even then, through the ages of Titan rule, the pattern of order and succession was clear. Birth, growth, challenge, and prophecy. Gaia's wisdom embodied in her children. would guide not only their actions but the structure of all that followed. The earth beneath remained quiet but vigilant, a steady presence underpinning the mightiest beings, reminding them that power, no matter how grand, rested always upon the foundation she provided. Thus the Titan age, while long and often uneventful in mortal terms, was a period of shaping and preparation. The cycles of power, prophecy, and lineage moved steadily, and through it all, Gaia remained the unseen architect of continuity. Her children ruled, but she endured. Her role as mother, advisor, and matriarch ensured that the cosmos would never lose its balance entirely. The earth, sometimes silent, sometimes trembling with the weight of divine activity, continued to carry all life, visible and hidden, upon its steadfast form. The age of the Titans, though vast, carried the weight of prophecy like a quiet current beneath its surface. Cronus, ruler of the cosmos, bore a secret fear that grew heavier with each passing year, that one of his children would rise to overthrow him, just as he had overthrown Uranus. This knowledge shaped his rule, instilling a cautious vigilance that shadowed even his victories. And yet, in the midst of this cautious dominion, the cycle of birth continued. The pattern that Gaia had established through generations. Rhea, daughter of Gaia and Uranus, bore 6 children with Cronus: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and finally Zeus. Each child was destined to play a critical role in the unfolding cosmos. But Cronus, gripped by the prophecy, swallowed each as soon as it was born, returning them to his own depths to prevent the foretold overthrow. Gaia, as mother and matriarch, observed these events with measured concern. Though she had once encouraged the overthrow of Uranus, she understood the necessity of continuity and the inevitability of prophecy. The last-born, Zeus, was different. Rhea, desperate to save him, turned to Gaia for counsel. The earth, witness to generations of succession, provided guidance that would preserve the child without shattering the balance of power prematurely. With Gaia's assistance, Rhea concealed Zeus in a hidden cave on the island of Crete, away from the reach of Cronus. There the young god would grow in secrecy, nurtured by caretakers chosen by fate, shielded from his father's consuming fear. As Zeus matured, the time came for the release of those who had been imprisoned for so long. The Cyclopes and Hecatonchires, once trapped within the depths of Gaia by Uranus, were freed to aid in the coming conflict. Brontes, Steropes, and Arges, masters of thunder and craftsmanship, forged weapons for the future Olympians. Cottus, Briareos, and Gyges, endowed with immense strength, prepared to join the struggle that would decide the fate of the cosmos. Gaia, though distant in the cave of her own making, ensured that the lineage she had nurtured remained ready to fulfill prophecy. The stage was set for the Titanomachy, the war of the Titans against the Olympians. Cronus and the older generation of Titans, though powerful, were challenged by the foresight and strength of the new Olympians, led by Zeus. The battle, immense yet told in myths with brevity, unfolded across the heavens and the earth. Lightning, fire, and the force of the hundred-handed hecaton Kyres shape the tide of conflict. Yet the narrative is less of spectacle than of succession, a cosmic shift from one order to another. Zeus emerged victorious, as the prophecies had long foretold. The Titans who had opposed him were cast into Tartarus, confined by bonds of unyielding strength. Yet even in defeat, Gaia's influence remained present. She had shaped the foundations of both generations, ensuring that the transition of power preserved the continuity of creation. The Cyclopes, once imprisoned and now freed, provided the weapons that would establish the Olympian supremacy, their craftsmanship, a direct legacy of Earth herself. Through it all, Gaia's presence was subtle but enduring. She had guided Rhea, supported the hidden growth of Zeus, and ensured that the children she had borne, even those swallowed or confined, would fulfill the cycle of succession. Her wisdom had preserved not only life, but the structure of divine order. Even as the Olympians claimed dominion, the earth beneath them, silent, enduring, eternal, remained the source from which all had sprung and to which all would remain connected. Thus, the prophecy that once threatened Cronus had been fulfilled, yet it had not broken the continuity of creation. Zeus's triumph marked the beginning of a new era, the age of the Olympians, but the lineage and legacy of Gaia continued unbroken. The Titans, though confined, remained part of the world's memory, and the younger gods were inseparable from the foundation laid by their mother. Order, succession, and prophecy had been preserved, ensuring that the rhythms of power and lineage would continue to shape the cosmos for all ages to come. After the Titanomachy, when Zeus and the Olympians had claimed dominion, Gaia's attention turned once more to the offspring of her earlier unions and the consequences of divine neglect. Though many of her children, the Titans, were confined to Tartarus, the earth herself continued to bear life that reflected her power and her discontent. Among these later generations were the giants, born from her union with Tartarus, a force of the abyss and the earth combined. They arose not merely as creatures of conflict, but as embodiments of rebellion and unrestrained strength, destined to challenge even the Olympians who now ruled the cosmos. The giants emerged from the fertile depths of earth, immense in stature, their forms blending the raw might of soil and stone with the restless energy of their lineage. They were bound to no master save the cycles of creation itself, and for a time they moved across the lands, a living reminder that the world had not been emptied of its ancient power. Their presence stirred tension among the gods. Zeus, forewarned of their potential, prepared for the confrontation that the myths would later recount as a series of battles. Conflicts described in calm terms focused less on spectacle than on the succession of generations. Later, Gaia bore Typhon, a being of prodigious size and force, born of her union with Tartarus as well. Typhon was so vast that the myths recount his reach extending into the heavens, his voice reverberating across the cosmos. Even Zeus, supreme among the Olympians, faced the magnitude of this offspring with careful strategy. Typhon's birth was not an act of vengeance alone, but a continuation of the natural cycle of succession, a reminder that power, however consolidated, remained contingent upon the enduring influence of the earth and its matriarch. The Olympians confronted these forces with the weapons forged by the Cyclopes, who had once been imprisoned within Gaia herself. Thunder and lightning, crafted with the knowledge of earth and sky, became instruments of containment. The battles unfolded across the expanse of the world. The giants were subdued and bound, their rebellion quelled by the combined efforts of divine foresight and the inherited strength of earlier generations. Typhon, despite his immense power, was likewise restrained, trapped beneath mountains or islands, his force sealed by a combination of strategy and divine authority. Throughout these events, Gaia's role remained consistent with her nature. She did not act in impulsive fury, but her presence and lineage shaped the outcome. Her influence ensured that the Olympians, though dominant, never severed the continuity of life that flowed from the earth. Every being she had borne, Titans, Cyclopes, Hecatoncheires, giants, Typhon, reflected her enduring capacity to shape existence and to remind even the gods of the foundations upon which their power rested. By the end of these mythic struggles, a new balance emerged. The Olympians ruled without immediate threat from the giants or Typhon, yet the earth itself remained a witness to the cycles of revolt and succession. Gaia continued to exist as the eternal mother, observing the consequences of her own creations while sustaining the foundations of the world. The giants and Typhon, though restrained, remained part of the broader cosmology, testament to the lasting scope of her influence, and a reminder that even in apparent calm, the earth holds the potential for immense power, waiting for the rhythms of succession to unfold. In this way, the stage was set for the era of reconciliation and later myths. The conflicts of the past, from the Titans to the Olympians, from imprisoned children to rebel offspring, had shaped the world in both visible and hidden ways. Yet through it all, Gaia remained constant, the origin, the mother, the foundation beneath every cycle of power and every unfolding generation. Her presence, though quieter than in the earliest ages, continued to sustain the cosmos, bridging the mythic past with the age of the gods who now reigned. With the storms of succession behind her, Gaia watched the world settle into the reign of Zeus and the Olympians. The Titans, once rulers of sky, sea, and earth, were now confined in Tartarus, their power restrained but never entirely erased. Even in their absence, the legacy of their lineages continued to shape the cosmos, and through them, the earth herself remained central to all that moved and breathed. Though much had passed, revolts, battles, and the birth of new generations, Gaia's presence endured quietly. She appeared in myth at moments of ritual and significance, often where divine oaths or sacred acts were concerned. Her role was neither dominant nor combative now, but she remained a guiding foundation. Among the tales that survived through the ages, she appeared at the wedding of Zeus and Hera, offering blessings and gifts that reflected her enduring status as mother of all life. Golden apples, symbols of abundance and continuity, were among these gifts, a quiet reminder that Earth herself had shaped the course of divine affairs. Even after the Olympians secured dominion, Gaia's influence extended through prophecy and sacred observances. Seers and priests, aware of her enduring presence, called upon her in moments that demanded balance, in rites that sought the favor of the earth, and in prayers for stability among the ever-shifting powers of gods and mortals alike. Though she did not intervene in every quarrel or decree, her legacy provided a constant, a point of reference for order and continuity that neither Titans nor Olympians could erase. The myths describe Gaia as a figure who quietly bridged the ages. She was the witness to cycles of power, the mother of beings who shaped the world through their deeds, and the foundation upon which creation rested. Even as Zeus assumed his role as king of the gods, her presence reminded all who revered her that life, succession, and order began with Earth. From her came the Titans, the Cyclopes, the Hecatoncheires, and the generations of gods and mortals that followed. She was the silent architect of continuity, ensuring that the lineage of creation remained intact despite the upheavals of revolt and prophecy. In this later age, Gaia's involvement in myth became less about direct action and more about affirmation. She remained present during sacred events, offerings, and the formation of oaths, her authority recognized through respect rather than force. Mortals and gods alike acknowledged her enduring relevance, knowing that the earth beneath them, steady, eternal, and foundational, carried the memory of all that had come before. The cycles of creation and succession had been established, and through them, Gaia's role as the mother and protector of life persisted. Thus, after the upheavals of Titans and Olympians, after battles and prophecies fulfilled, Gaia stood reconciled with the world she had created. Her influence, though quieter than in the early ages, remained indispensable. She was the source of lineage, the guardian of continuity, and the ever-present mother whose touch, whether through offspring or sacred rites, shape the rhythm of the cosmos. The myths that remembered her celebrated her enduring presence, a foundation beneath all life, a steady force behind the rise and fall of generations, a mother to all things visible and hidden. Even as new stories unfolded among gods and mortals, the memory of Gaia lingered. She remained a reminder that, in the grand narrative of the cosmos, all life returned to the earth, and all beginnings could trace back to the mother who had given form, sustenance, and continuity to the world. Her presence, quiet yet unshakable, bridged the past and the future, connecting each generation of divine beings with the foundation from which they had sprung. Through the ages, Gaia endured. She had given form to the world, birthed the Titans, Cyclopes, and Hecatoncheires, guided the overthrow of Uranus, and watched as Zeus and the Olympians claimed dominion. She had borne the giants and Typhon, witnesses to her power and her persistence, and had seen prophecies fulfilled across countless generations. And still, she remained beneath it all, the quiet, eternal foundation upon which the cosmos rested. Though her direct actions had become less frequent, her influence was never absent. Mortals revered her, offering homage in sacred rites and invoking her presence in oaths and ceremonies. Olympians, Titans, and even the restrained forces of her later children acknowledged her enduring role. She was the origin of life, the steady ground beneath heaven, the unseen hand that shaped continuity, even when storms of rebellion and succession swept across the divine realms. Gaia was both beginning and enduring presence. She existed beyond time, unshaken by conflict, unwearied by generations of gods and monsters. In her, the cosmos found a point of stability, a reminder that every struggle, every upheaval, and every prophecy ultimately traced back to the earth herself. Her children, her descendants, and the world itself carried her essence, even when her name was no longer spoken aloud. In this final age, Gaia remained patient, silent, and watchful. Her story, recorded in myth and passed through generations, spoke of creation, succession, and the cycles that shape all life. She was not a goddess of spectacle or fleeting triumph. She was the constant, the enduring source from which all things arose and to which they would return. Through the rise and fall of Titans, the rule of Olympians, and the balance of power across the heavens and earth, she remained the eternal mother of all. And so, as the world turned beneath the steady sky and as mortals and gods alike walked across the land, the memory and presence of Gaia persisted. She was the first form, the foundation of life, the quiet force upon which all generations leaned. Her name, Gaia, was a reminder of creation's origin, of continuity, and of the enduring bond between earth and all that it nurtured. In every root, in every stone, in every breath of wind or wave upon the sea. Her legacy lived, eternal, steadfast, and unbroken. The mother of all life, timeless and unwavering, had shaped the cosmos, and in her quiet constancy, the world found its beginning, its rhythm, and its enduring center. I hope you enjoyed tonight's story and that it has brought you a night of peaceful, restful sleep. Please join me again tomorrow night for another sleep story. Until then, sweet dreams.